everybody, and welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got an epic show ahead, but just remember, if any of you have experiences you'd like to share, I'd love to hear from you. You can either email me at paranormalportalradio@gmail.com or head over to paranormalportal.net and scroll down and find the button that says Interview Me, and that'll allow you to look at a calendar of possible times and dates and find a date that works for you. Love to hear your stories, so definitely get in touch with me. Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Portal podcast. How y'all doing out there? Hope everything is wonderful in your guys' world. We are gonna be embarking on an epic journey tonight. I have two longtime friends of myself in the Paranormal Portal here with us, and we are going to be diving into the world of giants and a lot of other strangeness over in the Pennsylvania area. So I hope you guys are ready, because we're going in. All right, we are joined today by Tommy Cooper and Jason Trost of Cryptovania, and they're here with us today, and we're going to just find out what's going on over on their end of the world. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for finally. It's great to finally be on the portal.
I know. You know, I tell you what, we've known each other for years, and it's like, why haven't we done this before now?
So busy.
It only took about 4 or 5 years. So tell me, what is it about Pennsylvania? Because I'm here to tell you, it is one of the key states of strangeness in the United States. Like, Pennsylvania comes up for everything. What's going on over there, guys?
Well, it's Cryptovania. I mean, that is in a nutshell the thing that does it, because there are so many ghosts and there's so many giants and all types of manners of things going on around here. That's just the best name there is Cryptovania, because it is wild.
It seems to be, but have you ever pondered that? Because like Pennsylvania and Ohio, Jason, are just names that come up all the time for this. Do you think there's some kind of correlation between those two states? And I mean, every state has their stuff, but certainly Ohio comes up for everything, and Pennsylvania comes up for everything. Is there some similarities that you guys can figure out between those two?
Yeah, actually, we kind of feel that the common thread for the increased activity that we experience here has to do with oil. We right here just a few just actually probably halfway between my house and Tommy's is the first ever commercial oil well. Colonel Drake's first oil well was dug here, Drake's well, and we spend a lot of time in the park that's basically dedicated to that, and we kind of feel that was the second oil boom that this area has encountered. When there around the turn of the 18th or the 19th going into the 20th centuries, there was still remnants of thousands of oil collection pits along Oil Creek locally here, and they were dug by hand or by something, and there were thousands of them, and they were wood lined. There were small logs that were sliced in half lengthwise, and then lined these pits, and they were for collecting oil. And the accepted narrative has always been that the Seneca at some point dug the pits and created them for oil for their hair.
Really?
Yeah, but there's no correlating stories from the Seneca themselves about this endeavor. Okay. And you would think it's quite an endeavor, because there was literally still thousands that were documented here back at like around 1910 or so, when this area was kind of exploding. And the thing, Oil Creek had its name long before Drake drilled his first well there. It's got its name because there's naturally occurring very crude oil on top of the water that collects. It seeps out of the ground. It seeps out of our swamps. It's why they drilled for oil along the banks. And what'll happen is in backwaters and eddies and such, you'll see this rainbow. It's brown. It has the sheen of when you have oil on top of water, and it's like this kind of thick brown scum. And it's a very crude oil. And we think that the connection between that and the giants, well, we figure, well, somebody was collecting that. But then over in Ohio, where they have lots of like old pyramid and rock mound activity, they found lamps. And we wonder if the lamps were being, fueled with the naturally occurring oil here. And somebody took the time and effort to dig thousands of pits and create these backwaters so that when the water would raise, it would fill these up, and then when it dropped back down, you would create these eddies and these backwaters, and you could collect oil. You could skim it off the top. And you can still find remnants of these wood-lined pits. We have pictures of them. In the park there, you can find the places where somebody dug these artificial backwaters and then lined them with these wood-lined pits. And you can't really date the wood with like carbon dating and stuff, because one of the things about petroleum is it's a fantastic preservative. So that wood is in theory 500 to 1,000 years old, but it's been permeated with crude oil, which is how people used to actually preserve wood here. You would soak it in crude oil, oil is just a huge part of our history here, and we believe that it was a big part of our prehistory here.
So is there any possibility, and you of course you and I were talking about the presence of giants potentially. Mm-hmm. Is there any, I mean, we don't know anything about the culture of giants other than a few legends and folktales and stuff, but were they generally considered somewhat advanced as far as you guys know, or do you have any insight into that?
Well, some of the giants were found, and they had copper helmets on and things. So they had like a good knowledge of copper weapons and things like that. And they're pretty huge, and they were not far from here at all. So, if it has copper,
a matter of fact, I'd say 15 miles from my house is the site of the largest reported giant discovery in America. We're the largest actual giants, and that was a copper helmet and a huge sword was supposed to have been found. That was in Hickory, or West Hickory here. Again, because of oil activity, they came across this stuff. And you can find Oil City newspaper has an old report of the giant and its helmet and its huge sword being on display for a couple days before being spirited off for protection by the Smithsonian folks.
Of course, yeah, they've managed to liberate several of our finds throughout the history of the country.
But before they disappeared, there was the newspaper articles, about this discovery and the bones on display and such. So you've got some historical record, even though you don't have the actual physical proof.
Right,
and that was on the Allegheny also.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, yeah. And a matter of fact, you go back to the Allegheny name, and that's awful similar to what the Delaware called the giants.
Really?
Was the Allegheny or something, very similar to that. And they have stories of eventually they had a war with the giants and wiped them out.
Really?
And for various reasons. But then the name, the Allegheny River might actually be named after a tribe of giants.
Wow. So that's a theme that, of course, comes up, across the country of, First Nations having conflict with these enormous beings, whatever indeed they are. But do you think that there's any evidence to suggest that those creatures, those beings are still present in like Pennsylvania and such? Or do you think that that's more of a relic of a past age?
Unless you think they're Bigfoot, which the argument can be made for that also.
Sure.
But I think a lot of people really think that they were vanquished south of the border they went down there, and then they may have come back. But at one point, I think that the Native Americans had vanquished them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that seems to be something. And there are still claims of people seeing these giants that, as far as the descriptions that I've been able to glean from the very few reports that there are here in the U.S., but they definitely don't look like what we would assume or give an example of Bigfoot. Like they, of course, are both of very large stature, but the reports that I've heard of people in more modern times citing these giants is red hair, beard, some kind of clothing even, and possibly even holding like some sort of tool or club or something like that. And so, but I do like what you're saying because, yeah, I mean, if it's 10 feet tall, covered in hair, or 14 or 15 feet tall and maybe not as much hair, that's not an easy distinction to make when you're looking at something that is just larger than life, Wow.
And then you also get into the realms of crossbreeding. Could Bigfoot be be a relative of both us and the giants? That's a possibility. And hybrids do weird things. Sure. When you do get hybrids to take, they can accomplish some odd things, including fantastic strength and stuff.
Sure.
Which could even lend itself, like maybe you would intentionally do that if you were maybe trying to create some incredible workers, especially if you're digging some pits and having some timbers. So that's a possibility there too.
That's a great take, and I hadn't really considered that, but yeah, and that's a thing. I mean, nobody knows for sure, but certainly, anything is game in this realm because there's no established criteria, there's no established fact, and I always say that throughout the course of my live shows when we do like the question of the week. It's like whatever you have to say is just as valid as anybody else, whether they've been at it for 50 years or 2 weeks. It's like. Your ideas are just as plausible, and that's a really fascinating one. I had never considered that. Huh.
And Tony Cooper always says, you don't know what you don't know.
Good point.
And also we do have a friend that's 7'3", so Ooh. There you go.
Wow, that's a big friend. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah. We use him for sometimes a lot of times for comparison sakes. Because, when he comes into a room, you're like, that's an awful big dude. And it's impressive. The one time he pulled up to Cryptovania HQ and he was riding a Harley Davidson with this crazy helmet, and he's this big, huge dude, and he pulls up, and you're not sure what's getting off that bike. And then he takes off the helmet, and you're like, oh, it's Bubba.
Grab the gun.
Yeah.
It makes a Harley look like a mini bike, yeah?
Yes. Yeah.
But that's something to consider. The first time I ever met this guy, I looked at him, I was like, he's 7'3". Imagine throwing 3-4 foot on top of him.
Yeah.
That is the size of purported Bigfoot sometimes. And it's like, that would be incredible to see something like that in the woods.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an absolute sobering thought. I've often wondered, what would that be like? Because it's hard to conceptualize. I mean, even if you're in the mall and you see a guy that's about 7 feet, it's like, oh my God, but like you said, add 3 feet and on both ways, on the width and the height.
Yes.
Because and you've got the Incredible Hulk, for any, lack of a better term. And that's got to be just, I guess, mostly emasculating. It's like, I no longer feel like a man.
And you kind of wonder too if maybe sometimes we choose not to see it because it's so out of what context for what we believe is reality.
Yeah. Well,
I don't really feel like seeing that right now. Thank you very much.
And that's like something that Tom Brown, the survivalist, that he talks about too, is like something that's so big or so little, you're already looking for something when you look for something and it's so big or little, or it does have a hat on, it doesn't have a hat on. If you want to evade somebody, that's a good way to do it. I mean, you could be walking down the street, go around the corner, pop down and take your hat off and just get low. And now all of a sudden you no longer look like you.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. And I think that's very powerful because, again, when we're looking for things, especially like a humanoid shape, we're also probably conditioned to look for something in our size range. But when you add that much mass on top of it and a natural ghillie suit, it's like, well, no wonder people can just walk right by them because we're not really trained to recognize that, in our natural environments.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Look at the giant of Kandahar.
Yes.
They had told those guys, they were like, shoot high, shoot high, shoot high. And they went in there and they saw the giant. And naturally, they had muscle memory. They shot high, and they ended up decapitating it. But that's why people think that they were told to shoot high.
That's incredible.
And go higher than you would think you would have to go because it's bigger than your mind doesn't comprehend the size that you're targeting.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It is really, really interesting, and that's fascinating. Just the idea is that, there's so much to this that I don't think the normal person, and I'm not, even me, like it's hard to wrap your head around unless you've seen it. What does 12 feet tall look like? Well, I don't know. My ceilings are, 9, and that's,
right.
But if I had, 3 more feet than that and huge and pissed, I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I gotta go ahead. I'm sorry.
You take a 7-footer and put a yardstick on top of them. I mean, wow.
Right. Right. That's incredible. In the region where you guys are, is there a lot of caverns or natural caves, or what is the geology like in your region?
There are. Go ahead, Tommy.
I was just going to say that there are a lot of caves, but a lot of them aren't really well known.
Okay.
Most of them are not publicized, but there are, and there are also coal mines. So the coal mines are everywhere also. but they're usually on private property. They're a ways off the road, all that kind of stuff. And then there's like the cave that you know about. That's the one that there was the TV show about it. I don't want to say where it's at, but
yeah, the one that has the solstices it's lined up.
Sure.
Yes, over in Tionesta.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, yeah, because there are some very, very large rocks around here. So you kind of get some of those washout caves in between huge rocks. And one of the things that we have geology besides the oil, which is just a huge part of our history, is also we have some fantastic clay. And there used to be quite a few clay factories around here. Back in the like 1870s and through up into the 1930s and 40s and such. There was our clay here is very high quality. And there's in the general vicinity of those oil pits we were talking about, one of the local universities had done a dig there focusing on pottery, and we had some very advanced pottery. So it looks like there's been several societies here have taken advantage of that from our times through Seneca and maybe prior to the Seneca, or at the same time as the Seneca being here. We do have, so we have again that pottery kind of leading itself to like maybe this was a real industrial center where you could both collect oil for lamps and high quality clay for making good pottery. And that's one of our geological features here. And then another thing that we have here that blends well into the paranormal is we have a lot of mounds. Just a half mile from Tommy's house is a very prominent mound that has been again explored and excavated by the Smithsonian folks back in, I think it was the 60s. And it's a rather good sized mound. And so there's a lot of those sprinkled through here in western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio. And over in eastern Ohio, you also had the largest pyramid in North America was there in Ohio, and they ended up knocking it down to make a reservoir up over there. And so like this huge pyramid structure, they decided they needed all that block for a reservoir. And that's very well documented. So you could see a lot of things a lot of dots that could easily be connected.
As well as the Serpent Mound is right there also.
Right.
Not very far.
Mm-hmm. So, and the Serpent Mound was where lamps were found. Brass lamps, I think they were, which you get into some weirdities like for timing and stuff because of having access to brass. But also, what were you putting in them lamps?
Oil, probably, yeah.
That's kind of what we think, and it's an incredible geological feature actually that we have, that with the amount of oil that you can see on standing water here and all over the place. Yes. And it's like a reddish brown, like a kind of like a scum, and you can smell it. And there's been several oil booms as the technology allows people to get to deeper sands, and then the next deeper sands. So like every 30 or 40 years, this area has produced some fantastic oil booms. And matter of fact, the oil that comes from here has its own grade. Penn grade oil is the highest quality oil in the world. We don't make a lot of oil. We make 0.5% of the world's production of oil, but half of all the cosmetics, Maybelline, and stuff like that is made from Penn crude oil. We have a local plant, I think 45 miles from here. They take petroleum and they convert it down to they take a barrel of oil and they convert it down to about 1 inch, and that's the base for aspirin. Which is amazing. Yes. And that's because we have a very high paraffin content. There's a lot of wax in our oil here. And it makes it very hard as a producer because that wax is very hard on equipment. And it makes maintenance a real pain in the butt. I've done it. And we've serviced a lot of oil rigs and stuff. Tommy and I, when we used to do tires, that oil, the presence of oil just permeates our general atmosphere here. And you wonder about maybe some odd juju that comes from it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, something I've always pondered, and it's not unique to me. I know a lot of people have gone down this rabbit hole, at least conceptually, is that what was here long before we ever came to these shores? What was going on in the Americas? I know we know the Inca and we know the First Nations and the Maya and all of these. Well, I mean, they were advanced, of course, but was there other intelligences that were here, and did they have this amazing industry? And whether they were giants or whatever they were, it's just these big question marks. Because just hearing that they're finding these copper implements that certainly wasn't relegated historically, at least as far as I know, to the First Nations tribes. Like they weren't into that kind of mining and smelting and producing metal implements. So what was going on there?
Yeah, and a common thread about those mounds. We find those we think that's an important dot, because those mounds, you can follow how they go down the areas that have mounds prominent in them. It goes kind of down through North America and down into Central America and like Peru and stuff. Wow. And then you start looking into those odd cultures. The star people there are fantastic stuff there. In Peru, it seems like there was the cornerstone of maybe more than one civilization there. Sure. And maybe we were connected right here to that through that mound system. Was that a trading system? Maybe. Was it a network? And that's kind of where we lean. Those are the dots that we've connected to. And maybe it's, we like to try and place ourselves in an important place in history, but, maybe we're also accidentally right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think of like Puma Punka and some of the stonework there, that is just beyond even capabilities of today. And it's like, how did these ancient people do this stuff? They're basically Bronze Age tools at best. And yet they're molding, granite to like laser precision. It's like, wow, right. That stuff really cooks. And it makes you
wonder, if we had access to that, like that pyramid in Ohio, what could we find from that rock that's there? Right. Because here we're not in the desert. Things overgrow. And so something like that size in our woods is quickly overgrown, and the details get muted. What fine details are hidden in there.
Right. And then you think about just around the globe, there's pyramids around the globe. Mm-hmm. And these were, well, at least according to our, prevailing knowledge, these were isolated cultures that, weren't probably communicating and changing architectural plans. So how did they all come to this conclusion? and metallurgy and even pottery. How did all of these disparate cultures go, hey, that sticky stuff there, I'll bet you if we shot it with some fire, we could probably make bowls and vases. It's like, how did they all get there? So this is the part that I'm just always thinking about. It's like, how did this happen? Because was there other forms of communication, or was there ancient trade going on between continents long before we thought, that kind of stuff? It's just amazingly complex when you think about it.
Yeah, and you look at some of the languages and stuff, like, some of the languages around New Mexico, of First Person nations there, they seem very out of place, and they're much more akin to some of the stuff over in Europe and Asia and such. And it's, and the same with some of the bows that were used in that area, in those areas, like very out of place with their neighbors, but very similar to folks across the oceans. And it really, there's some cloudy timelines there.
Yeah. And cultures that seem to have melted away, like the Olmecs. It's like, what happened to them? Which were, they had very Polynesian features, but they're in Central America. It's like, well, I don't know. And that's the big question mark. But I think that, very possibly a lot of this could have come from what was left of the giant races. A lot of this stuff may have been gleaned from them. I don't pretend to know with any authority.
How about this? What if the oceans used to be a lot lower than what they are right now? Way, way lower. That would make, like, France with the United States, like, it would suddenly be a lot closer to get to.
Sure.
With for the arrowheads and that kind of things. Because I know some people that collect arrowheads, and they said the same ones found in France are also available right here, and they have a distinct thing about them. So it's you wonder if maybe the oceans were different then.
Right. Yeah, I think there probably was more advancement in the ancient world than we've given credit for in our modern age. I think that they were so much more capable than we've come to those conclusions. And by we, I don't mean us, but I mean the prevailing theories. They just basically say that these were. And when you think about it, I mean, oftentimes I think in our hubris, when we think of ancient cultures, we think, oh, superstition, they weren't really that smart and stuff. But I mean, these were the seeds of what became of today. These were intelligent people. They just didn't have everything as figured out, maybe as we do, but maybe they kind of went different directions than the way we went too. Like our technological advancement is just seems to be pretty linear, but perhaps there's other advancement. I don't know. I guess I'm just spitballing here, but this is the kind of stuff that just rocks through my head. And I try to make sense of it because, again, this is all a big journey we're on. It's and the other part of it is the maddening part for me is that, and I don't mean to monopolize the conversation, but you guys got me started now. But for us to truly embrace the scientific method, you've got to consider all the possibilities until they can be systematically ruled out. But a lot of our science community says, nope, this is the way it is. This is the avenue we're going. And we don't do that other stuff. And it's like, why? You're ignoring huge pieces of this puzzle,
Yes.
And that's one of the things that, when you circle back to what goes on in today's world, a lot of times people will confuse a convincing or loud argument with, well, that totally proves something wrong or debunks it. And so a lot of times, maybe I'm not quite as good at arguing as maybe Tommy is, and maybe he kind of overpowers me, and this is how it is, and okay, but that
I don't
really
ever say that, by the way.
Just an example.
No. Sorry about that. I'll pay for that one later. But maybe, and I think a lot of times we confuse an argument with proving something.
Right. Yeah.
Like when you go into a court of law, you want to have the best lawyer you can. You want the guy making you're going to pay as much as you can for the guy making the convincing argument. Even if your case is slam dunk, you want the best guy making the argument. And maybe sometimes the best guy making the argument is arguing for the wrong, for the wrong conviction.
Yeah.
And so, like, a lot of times we see things with videos and pictures and accounts, and people will say, oh, that's been debunked. And it's, well, debunked, that's maybe a word that maybe we should get rid of. Maybe somebody made a convincing argument.
Yes.
But that's not a debunking.
Right.
Also, the debunked thing, I think we should also put the fact checking. I think we should put it there too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. They kind of bleed into one another. And who's doing the debunking or fact checking, and maybe that person just has a little too much power in the conversation, and maybe they win, but that doesn't. If I can out argue you, that doesn't mean that suddenly stop signs are blue just because I make a much better argument than you can about them being red.
Yeah.
We still don't change the reality with our arguments.
Sure. And science is funded. And my case in point is, well, hell, smoking was absolutely harmless for decades, generations. It was, there's no scientific fact to show that smoking is cause of cancer and everything else until it did. And then it was they had books and folders and libraries full of evidence to show it's harmless until someone else did show that it was not harmless. And then it changed the narrative. So, but you're right. It's an uphill battle, because when you're battling these fundings and these quote unquote authorities, you've got an uphill battle, but it can be won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an important take. You guys had talked about this story of a child missing, and I'd like to get into that if you guys don't mind with what time we have left.
That's not a problem at all.
Okay.
Tommy, do you want to start with that?
I can start it, but you have to finish it, I think. So one of our customers come in here, and he was listening to a podcast, and he told us about this story, and he started telling us where it had happened at, and it was right by Jason's house.
Oh.
It was in the oil boom days. There was a kid, his name was Jackie Copeland, and they were at a picnic. His dad was an oil man, and there was like a picnic at this place. It was way back in the woods, of course. But the kid, like him and most of the other kids, were walking around and out misbehaving out in the woods and stuff. And lo and behold, Jackie Copeland come up missing. And so they had a search party, and this was a guy he was a well-reported man. I mean, he was somebody. So they had the cops, and everybody was out searching the woods and stuff, and they couldn't find us in an airplane. And it was like, I think 2-3 days he was in the woods, and then suddenly, just like in Missing 411, he comes back, and he had been in a place that was searched over and over and stuff. And he come back and he said that there was like a type of bear or whatever that had protected him the whole time he was in the woods and stuff. And that was
protected him from a pack of wolves, he said.
Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah. It was he was gone for a few days, and this was it was either in the 50s or the 60s. And when they did find him, like you said, that he was in an area that they had been to many times. They had scoured the area. It's just down the road here. It's called Tight Pinch Road. And it's called Tight Pinch because the road makes there's a rock formation that pinches the road awful tight. And there's not much passing room there. It's just enough room for a vehicle now.
Wow.
And they searched this area, and they had a lot of people because it wasn't just a little family picnic. It was like a big company picnic for one of the big like Quaker State or Pennzoil or something like that. And so there was probably 60 to 100 people there, and he just ended up coming up missing. And everybody was searching there. They were using dog teams. They had two separate bloodhound teams looking for him. They had an airplane circling. And then lo and behold, he just kind of shows up and has this tale of being protected from wolves, and I think he was like 4 or 5 at the time. It was touched on, I think, David Pilates, I think he touches on it in one of his Missing 411 episodes, doesn't he?
I think he does.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a lot like the story of the kid recently that had gone missing in North Carolina or whatever that was, that he was protected by the bear.
Hathaway.
Yeah.
That was Casey Hathaway over there. And I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago over in North Carolina. He was gone for a similar amount of time, like 3 days, and comes back with a tale of a bear that protected him.
And he was 3. He was 3, right?
Yeah, I think he was only 3, I do believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just a little guy out there. And again, I think he kind of showed up out of an area that had been searched.
Yes.
But he has no idea where he's, other than he got protected by a bear. So that's kind of local here. And again, it was part of the oil fields. That there just used to be so much industry out in the woods out there collecting oil and servicing. And it's just a big part of our history. And there at that picnic, Jackie Copeland comes missing, and and just like the one in North Carolina, it's got a happy ending to it.
And interestingly enough, with both of those cases, you think, well, what does a 3-year-old have a vocabulary of? I mean, they don't know about Bigfoot, I'm sure. So if it was something like a Bigfoot, it was like a bear, something big and hairy must be a bear. And much like the other child being even a little bit older, but there was no narrative for it back then. Maybe the most common term used in the old, America was wild man, like everything was a wild man. But, a 4-year-old wouldn't have a concept of that. It's a bear. It's full of hair and it's big. Must be a bear. So I find those stories absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and we have a lot of stories like that around here too, about a wild man running around the woods and stuff. And you kind of wonder what exactly that was, because it probably wasn't a wild man. Right. So
it was
you wonder what exactly it was, and how many of our stories that we grew up hearing were something else.
Right.
Around here we have right in the park a lot of stories about the old red eyes at Miller Farm, which is between me and Tommy. Don't go out don't be going out at night near the park, because old red eyes will get you. And there's several sightings here of a white Bigfoot.
Yes.
with some saying having red eyes and some saying having black eyes. But that's like that white Bigfoot sighting is like maybe every 20 years here we get one. So it's like gone on for quite a length of time.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
and it had its own name. Don't go messing around after dark because old red eyes will get you. Well, what exactly was old red eyes?
It's funny. In that, as a side note, it's kind of interesting that all of these things, I think there is a historical precedent for them. Like, a lot of First Nation tribes have the stories of like Janoskwa or Zonaqua and Janoskwa and many other names of like these Bigfoot-like beings, but they're always sewn into tales to keep the kids in, like don't go out in the woods because they'll come take you away.
Right.
And we had the boogeyman when I was growing up, and the wood boogers, another one. And it's like all of these get sewn into cautionary tales, but there's got to be some wisdom in that, right? Geez, that's amazing.
Right. And like you think back on our folks, like our grand folks and stuff, and like they were kind of a rough stock.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't just take kindly to just, oh, that's just some dude that runs around in the woods and every now and then he steals something, steals something off your porch or, a pie out your window. It's just,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that they were that forgiving.
There'd be a lot of rock salt and buckshot involved, I'm sure.
Yes. Maybe some dogs and stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, go ahead,
I
sir.
think I'm one of the few people in the world that both of my parents had their own Sasquatch sightings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to dive into that, but we're going to have to get you guys back. Obviously, this conversation is just scratched the surface. So if you guys are willing, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Well, fantastic.
Pleasure.
You guys have been absolutely amazing. I'm glad it finally happened. It took way too long, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys and talking to you.
Well, thank you very much.
It's all my pleasure. But we'll get you back. We'll talk and figure out when that will be. It just goes too quick. So thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks to the portal and everybody. You guys, you have a good community there.
Oh my God. I can't take any credit for it. They've kind of all adopted me, thank God, but they're a wonderful group of people. There's no question.
We love the portal peeps.
Well, we love you guys too, man. You guys have been part of the family for a long time. So, all right, gentlemen.
Thank you for when we first started. You gave us permission to put episodes of the portal on our Cryptovania Roku channel, and we really appreciate that. We do. Very proud to host those episodes of Paranormal Portal, and you let us just pick and choose the ones that we wanted, and we had a menu that we were very proud of, and thank you very much.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. You guys have been amazing friends for a long time, so it's the least I can do, and what the hell? It was a wonderful adventure, and I'm excited to continue this relationship and continue diving down these rabbit holes, guys.
Right on.
Excellent.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for tonight, but until next time. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for us today. So hope you guys enjoyed the show, and thank you again so much for all your love and support. And remember, if you want to follow the Paranormal Portal, probably the easiest way is to head over to paranormalportal.net. And that's the homepage for the Paranormal Portal. And you'll find links to all of our different social media and sites and information about the shows, including our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/paranormalportal. Or just look for Paranormal Portal on Google or whatever search engine, and you'll find links to our social media such as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. So we're kind of all over the place, and we're spreading as well as we can. But anyway, thank you so much for the love and support. You all take care, and remember, we love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out. Find the magic in every day and remember to laugh as much as you can. Until next time.